Welcome back to another episode of Hello Ladies, where feminism meets pro wrestling. I am your host, Sabrina Hannon, and Megan is not able to join us today, but we do have a very special guest. You are probably familiar with his work in New Japan, Bloodsport, and really just about everywhere now. It's Alex Coughlin, from Long Island, New York. Welcome, Alex.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I hope I can fill in Megan's shoes tonight and help you out with the podcast. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on. Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you for jumping on the podcast. Um, Now you have been wrestling now for how long? I know you took a little bit of a break when you started your training, but like how long would you say it is?
I would say accumulatively, five and a half, about between 5.5, 6 years, I'd say. It's weird because I started years ago, 2015, trained for 5 months, had a match, got hurt, stopped for a year, started again in 2018. So I don't count that whole time, just the times where I was kind of actively in it. And it's a little bit of math, but between 5.5 and 6 years. That's my estimate.
And how long were you like out of wrestling school really before you got signed to New Japan?
I was not out of wrestling school. I was still going to wrestling school for sure. At the time, they definitely weren't looking for people who were, uh, you know, too experienced, too set in their ways. Not that they weren't looking for people who'd done it before, but I was only about 6 or 7 months training. Only a couple matches under my belt when I went out there, and they're looking for fresh people to build up from the ground up. It was a training school at dojo, so you mold the clay instead of bringing people in and who already know what they're doing. Uh, you know, they just wrestle on shows, which is great. But yeah, not very experienced before the whole dojo experience. So a lot of trial by fire, learning as we went, and it was a time for sure. 5 whole years that.
And New Japan was kind of the goal for you, right? That was what you were aiming for.
Yeah, always. I was a fan of Japanese wrestling ever since I had access to the internet. And I got into wrestling as a little kid. My friend showed me WWF and TV, and then just blossomed from there. All the research, and basically ever since I found Japanese wrestling, I fell in love, and that's always been the goal.
Now, when you started watching, did you have like through the internet, did you have dial-up internet?
Yeah, it was difficult at first because
Mhm.
your mom's on the phone. You're like, "Oh, mom, can I hit the phone? I'm trying to watch it." And, the videos take forever to try to watch it. It's 240p, the awful grainy. You could barely watch it, but you don't even notice back then. You just tell which pixel is, Shinya Hashimoto and which one is Hiroshi Hase. And it was awesome. And thankfully, it's gotten easier since then.
Yeah, much easier. With when you started, so when did you actually get signed to New Japan?
Well, we get signed. The first LA Dojo camp I took was 2018. I technically got signed a couple months after that for coming to the LA Dojo as a young lion. And ever since then, I've been technically under contract. So
Wow.
about mid 2018.
So you had about 2 years, and then the pandemic hit full swing.
Yes, it
What
did.
what was it like before the pandemic, and then once it hit for you?
Well, before the pandemic, I was actually supposed to fly to Japan and wrestle Juice Robinson in the first round of the New Japan Cup in 2020. It was like the day before I was going to fly out. I was like going to fly out March 15th. And like March 14th was when everything got shut down. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to Japan. We were doing shows in America. We were supposed to go, international and wrestle all these places. And that just, stopped, as everybody knows, with everything else in the world. And yeah, that really threw a wrench in everybody's plans, huh?
Yeah, it definitely has. I think like as I was looking over your career and like digging through the little archive, um, what I was most impressed by was obviously the pandemic really put like a pin in everything, but it seems um like you've just been on fire like since everything has opened up. Especially I want to say maybe the last 6 months. My time is hard to process now since like the pandemic happened. Everything's just kind of one big blob. But
Yeah, there's no like one marker like, oh, it stopped, it started here and this phase here, and now people can go. It was all a mesh of a gradient of different levels of panic for years. It's just a whole blob. But yeah, about 6 months is about right. I had an injury about last May, last June that took me off for quite some time. And the first time I really started rocking and rolling again was my comeback in November and December of the heavyweight World Tag League in New Japan, back in Japan, which was, yeah, about 6 months ago. And since then, well, thank you very much for saying I've been on fire. I've been trying. I've been working very hard. I've had a couple setbacks, but every time I get hurt, I just come back stronger because if I can't, train physically, I try to get just creative and think of ways I can improve in the meantime and really focus there. So in one way or another, I'm always trying to improve. And now here I am, just trying to show what I got now that I'm back into it, trying to keep the ball rolling.
well, it from like, a fan's perspective, it definitely seems like the ball is definitely rolling with momentum at this point.
Hell yeah.
Um, so for those who don't know, WrestleMania weekend is when the last Bloodsport took place, and I think it was the second one you've worked, right?
I've actually done a handful of blood
Oh, okay.
sports. This was Bloodsport 9, and I've done every one since 4.
Oh,
My,
okay.
but this was the second one that I've done in this building, the Ukraine Cultural Center. The other one that I've done in that building was Bloodsport 7 against Filthy Tom Lawler a year or two back. But yeah, the Bloodsport WrestleMania weekend. Well, WrestleMania weekend for me was a very busy Thursday afternoon. I came in for the Thursday, wrestled Bloodsport, and then drove directly to the Globe Theater downtown for the Impact New Japan Multiverse show,
Mhm.
and partied a little bit, and then flew back home.
I was, so I'm going to now go on a tangent. I was actually really excited when I saw that you were doing the Multiverse show because when I first started like watching your matches, I thought like, oh, I would love to see him against Joe Hendry because
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah.
you have similar styles in that like you're both just super strong
Oh
and
yeah.
go through that. And I was like, oh yes, someone's on my Christmas list.
Hmm.
So I was super excited. Like you guys, I mean, there were other people in the match too, obviously, but
Yeah.
you
Who
know,
cares about them though? Yeah, we're talking about us. Yeah.
yeah, you guys put on a great show.
Well, thank you very much. Joe Henry is a man that's been on my he's been on my radar for quite some time, and it was great to lock horns with him a little bit in that match. But I think a singles match needs to happen at some point in the future. Someone I'd definitely love to go toe to toe with at full tilt.
Yeah.
Mostly for what I'd love to hear what he'd come up with for his entrance to make fun of me.
I mean, I'm sure the what was it, World's Strongest Baby you were called at one point.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for reminding
Oh
me
yeah, of
and
course.
people about
So I'm sure
that.
that would come up,
Yeah,
but
probably. Dang
um
it.
maybe do you think there would ever be a musical collaboration? Because you were in a ska band, correct? At
Oh,
one point.
yes. Fantastic callback. Absolutely. Those were my high school days. It's OBS. We were West Islip's #1 ska band, as far as we knew.
As far as you knew, yeah.
Yeah. No, we didn't hear anybody better, personally, in high school.
Hmm. Yeah, so maybe you guys can start a tag team or something with
Yeah, maybe not a singles match, maybe a collaboration. I like that idea too.
hmm just I'm willing things that I want into the universe.
You got to put it out there, 100%.
Yeah. But jumping back to your match with John Moxley, you kind of, I don't want to say that you fell into that match in that somebody else was supposed to wrestle him, but they retired.
Yeah, I think fell into it is kind of an accurate way of putting it. Because originally scheduled to wrestle Yuya like a month or two out from the show. The whole time, I was excited. I'd wrestle Yuya a bunch of times. I knew it was going to be a fantastic match in its own right. And then a week before that whole thing happened, where his original opponent retired, and I got a phone call from Josh Barnett. He was like, "Hey, you want to wrestle Mox?" And I was like, "Yes." And he's like, "Okay, cool. Send me a promo." And that was it. It was just it was like exactly a week beforehand. So that was cool. And Moxley is my mom's favorite wrestler, so I got to be like, "Oh, guess who I'm wrestling?" So Bloodsport 9 was my mom's two favorite wrestlers fighting each other.
I was
So
just gonna say, I was like, I hope you mean other than yourself.
yeah, it was hard. I couldn't get a hard answer out of her, but
Hmm.
at least it's close.
So you come from like a wrestling family, then, like fans of wrestling.
Honestly, no.
Oh,
Not in the household growing up. I was really the big one that was into wrestling, and my parents were just always supportive. It was like, "Oh, you like wrestling?" They knew a little bit, growing up. They watched maybe a little bit here and there, but me being a kid and never quite growing out of that phase and always loving wrestling. I had some family members, but none in the direct household, and they just loved it because I loved it, which was really cool. So shout out to my parents for always being supportive.
that is wonderful to hear. And clearly supporting your children pays off. So,
I mean, yeah, thank God for that. Shit.
what would you say is, 'cause obviously with blood sport, for those who don't know, there aren't ropes. There's no ropes. So, I mean, in a traditional wrestling match, it's almost like the ropes are another partner in the ring, and suddenly you don't have that. How do you adjust to suddenly not having these ropes to use?
It is a tremendously different style of wrestling altogether because that's a whole element, like you're saying, the ropes that you just can't use anymore. So there's less you can do, but there's also more if you think about it. Like it's easier to fall out of the ring. He shoved me out of the ring in the match. I fell on the floor, it hurt, but then I power bombed him on the corner of the apron, which is something that probably wouldn't happen if there were ropes there. But there's no rope breaks. There's no real running involved. You're just in there, two guys fighting, two guys, two gals. And, I actually kind of like that environment. Less to worry about. I kind of like fighting in its more pure sense. So Bloodsport is always a special time for me.
Okay. Would you agree that the side or the apron of the ring is the hardest part of the ring?
Well, unless you're speaking objectively, they're like the unexposed, I mean, the completely uncovered metal posts that are on, all four corners. I feel like that's technically the hardest. The apron's very hard, don't get me wrong. It's more hard than anywhere in between the ropes. But it's still got a little bit of protecting. I'm just speaking objectively to be pedantic. The corners, I would say, would be technically the hardest part of the ring.
That would also make sense. I had to ask since certain commentators, that's all you hear.
Yeah.
The hardest
I
part of the ring.
It's always fun. It's like the Wilhelm scream. You always hear for it. You're like, ah, that guy said it.
Hmm.
Like the catchphrase.
Yes, yeah. Um, I don't. Speaking of catchphrases, do you have any?
A couple of things I've been workshopping, but nothing in particular. I have a theme song written that I worked on with my friend Nick, who put us in contact together. And my sister helped me out the lyrics too. It was a whole collaborative effort, something I'm very proud of. And the whole theme I wanted to base it around was just stand and fight, which was just my mantra. Like, yeah, I'm not no tricks, no nothing, just slug it out. I'm here to fight. That's it. But nothing really on a t-shirt.
Yeah,
I should probably work on that. I don't want to make some money. Shit, what am I doing?
t-shirts, are definitely a very lucrative business. So,
That's true.
um,
Everybody needs a shirt.
hmm was Nick in your band or in high school, or do you just know him
There
from?
were different bands. He was not in the ska band, but there were other projects that we were involved in. We were primarily in, I would say, metal bands together, but
Okay.
mostly just covering Slayer, Megadeth, Mastodon, just having fun. Just songs that we liked in our garages. Good times.
Yeah. Sometimes those are the best times, just
Uh,
like hanging around with friends. Uh,
Wholeheartedly agree.
so you mentioned you have at least one sister. Is it just you and your sister, or are there other siblings?
Me and my sister have two younger brothers too,
Okay.
and three step siblings.
Okay. Where
So
do
it's a
you
whole big thing. Yeah.
so where do you fall in the birth order? Is your sister older or younger than you?
Older sister, two younger brothers. So I'm the oldest boy, but the second oldest total.
Okay. But with there being four biological siblings and then, the bonus siblings as well, it's not like you weren't like the middle child, so you wouldn't have middle child syndrome or anything.
No, I wouldn't say so. Being the oldest boy kind of gives me a little bit of edge to tip out of that territory. So I never felt like the middle child.
Mm.
Yeah.
Was your sister nice? Did she ever like bedazzle you or anything like that?
Yeah, but it was mean and bedazzling, not nice bedazzling.
Mm.
It was mean spirited bedazzling every time. I tried to escape, but she wouldn't. She wouldn't let me.
I don't think I've ever
Uh,
heard of mean-spirited bedazzling ever, but I
uh,
like
you're
that.
better off. Yeah,
I'm going to definitely use that somehow.
yeah.
Mean spirit.
It's a valid threat. It's not pleasant.
It's definitely a valid threat, especially like the amount of glitter that I own.
No, it takes
Yeah.
forever to get off. Oh, it's a whole
Hmm.
thing.
Oh yes. And I feel like probably in wrestling, there's got to be also a lot of glitter involved. Not so much in, well, no, I mean, if you go against like a Dalton Castle or something, maybe,
Yeah,
but
depending on who you're wrestling, definitely some glitter, but always some sort of spray tan smell. I'm usually the offender, but that's basically it. And then leave-in conditioner, hopefully.
mm,
Most wrestlers smell nice because, nobody wants to smell bad in the ring. You know, I have Listerine breath strips that I always take before my matches just in case. I have my deodorant, my coconut butter. I make sure it's a pleasant experience. I'm never a smelly man.
I
Hygiene is
feel
very important in wrestling.
I feel like that's probably got to be like a cultural change because listening to like older wrestlers from like the 80s and 90s,
Mhm.
you don't necessarily hear about nice smells. It's usually the opposite. So,
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that part changed.
yeah. Um, oh, I had a thought and now it has left. It'll come back. Um,
Circle back, circle back.
yeah. And so you are wrestling like, veterans, people who are at the top of their game. What are you learning from these folks?
Basically everything. I mean, I learned a lot in the 5 years I've been at the dojo, but then there's things you learn in class and there's things that you learn live, going out there, doing the matches. And again, it's one thing wrestling with people on your level, people who I came up and trained with, people I lived with, whenever I wrestled Clark or Carl or against TK or Kevin or Yuya or Narita or anybody like that. It was one thing, and you'd learn this and you'd learn that. But like you're saying, the experienced people, the Moxleys, the Christopher Daniels, all these veterans, there's just so much more. The finer details, the real next level stuff, like timing, pacing, everything that goes into a match. And you want more of that at all points. Obviously, the more experience you get with the more experienced people, the better you get faster. So I hope to keep the ball rolling in that regard too. And the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And I like a challenge. So bring them on.
Yeah, and it definitely looks like some people like when you lift people up, those look like some pretty heavy falls. So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, definitely I've always loved wrestling. At no point have I thought I'd really love to have my body hurt like this. So
Yeah.
I give you a lot of credit. Um, with when you were, well, even to now, what's one move that maybe like when you were a fan or even like before you had taken it, you were like, oh, that doesn't seem like it's going to hurt that much. And then you were like, oh God, ow.
I got most of that out of the way before I ever started wrestling training because me and my brothers and my friends would wrestle and we'd be like, oh, let's try the Boston Crab. Let's try the sharpshooter. And we learned which ones actually hurt, which was most of them, depending
Hmm.
on how you did them, if you did them right. So, uh, I was pretty experienced in the big theatrical holds by the time, but there were a lot of things that I wasn't experienced in. I had no background in like amateur wrestling or anything like that beforehand, so learning that from Shibata from the years and learning catch wrestling from Josh Barnett, all that stuff was new and painful, but also awesome because I love that style. So mostly that kind of stuff, the more uh, amateur style wrestling.
Gotcha. When I hear catch wrestling, there's two names that really come to mind, Josh Barnett, and then the other one would be Shayna Baszler.
Mm.
Have you had the opportunity to like sit under her learning tree at all?
No, we've never really crossed paths, unfortunately. Maybe in passing, but we never trained together. But I really hope that we do at some point. I think that would be great. I'd somebody I'd definitely love to learn from.
Yeah, she's I'm very biased. She is one of my favorites overall.
She's
Um,
awesome. Yeah.
mhm. Also someone like there are some people like even if they were like, "Oh, do you want to try?" I'd be like, "No, mm-mm,
Yeah.
no, please don't touch my arms.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, don't touch me. I don't trust you. Yeah, go
Don't
hurt.
even look at my in my direction. It hurts." Um, so obviously with working within New Japan Wrestling and going over to Japan and being such a fan of Japanese wrestling, have you learned Japanese throughout this process?
Here and there, it's something that I've been picking up. Living with Shibata and Narita and Yuya and going to Japan. You learn here enough to get by, but in Japan, it's actually easy enough if you spoke no Japanese. They speak enough English to where, depending on where you were, you can get by. You can read signs. Most places, they'll have a McDonald's that you can walk into and order from, and they'll know what you're talking about. So you could go to Japan and speak no Japanese. Yeah, obviously it makes it easier if you do. But it wasn't too hard of a time the first times over there, but you pick more of it up as you go, going out with the Japanese guys when you're there. And yeah, something I really want to work more on personally.
Yeah. I understand that like as a wrestler, if you're in New Japan, I would imagine, especially if the other wrestlers are taking you out, it's a very different experience than with like American audiences or American fans. Like, I think someone once described it as kind of like being a superhero there. Has that been your experience?
The sponsor dinners, yeah, they just have lots of money and they take you out to dinner and buy you lots of food, and it's always awesome. And then sometimes you get to hit them because they want you to. And that's strange, but like if they want me to and it'll make them happy, then I don't see why not. Thanks for the steak and the beer anytime. But yeah, they're always cool. I'm not gonna say no to steak. Yeah.
Um, what would you say? So, what would you tell like an American who is going to Japan for the first time? What's something that they should try while they're there?
Ooh, something that they should try while they're there. Just walking around.
Yeah,
The little hole in the wall stuff. I mean, it's one thing looking at a bunch of stuff to know beforehand and wherever you go, but it's just easier just to go in and take the city in as you explore it yourself. Just walking around. I found some really cool places. Just days off, afternoons off, just walking for a couple hours, finding cool little. I happened upon a Kirby themed restaurant when I was in, it might have been Shizuoka. I can't remember exactly where it was, but I ate at a Kirby cafe, just exploring, and it was a great old time. So yeah, just enjoy Japan when you're there. It's hard to find nothing, You'll find something when you're walking.
what is the strangest vending machine you found while walking around?
I don't know if there's one particular strange one, but they're all kind of strange because there's like carbonated milk beverages in them, and you can get, sodas and waters and all these energy drinks. But you can also get like a hot can of coffee. Like there's cold drinks and there's hot drinks. Like I don't know, hot can of coffee doesn't sound super appetizing, but you can get it if you want.
It
They're
kind
never
of also
super
sounds like it would.
expensive.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, if you're out there in the winter and like you want something just to hold on to warm your hands up for 120 120 yen, 130 yen. It gets the job done. It's not going to taste very good, but
Oh, yeah, I can't imagine that. And the other thing I was thinking was like hot can does not sound like something I want in my hand.
yeah. Unless you objectively just want to warm something. It can get cold there sometimes.
Yeah. What is the longest stint you've done in Japan so far?
I would say this last one, it was from November to December. I was there about 5 weeks. It's not a super long time, but not a short trip either.
Do you get, with all the traveling that you do you ever get homesick?
Um, I did initially, but not so much anymore.
Did the
Thankfully.
pandemic kind of grind that out of you?
I was gonna say, yeah, I just been I felt like a thing like a pestle and mortar. Like afterwards I could withstand any amount of time away from home.
That's definitely fair, being
Yeah. It was
trapped for
tempered.
a while.
Yeah, it's stuck in this house.
Yeah. Um, how, so if you're not like filling in kind of last minute for something, how long like in advance do you usually find out that you're going to have a match or that you have to be somewhere?
Oh, it's always different. Sometimes you find out beforehand through email, and then the announcement gets made, and you're aware of it beforehand. And sometimes you see the graphic of your face against this guy's face, and you're like, "Oh, I guess I'm going to be there in 4 days," and then you're there in 4 days. So, uh, the one of the number one important key things to being a pro wrestler is having a flexible schedule, be being ready to go on a short notice. That's very important because it does happen, but yeah, sometimes it's months in advance. Sometimes it's a few days. Shit happens.
Yeah, yeah. That has to be difficult. Like if you have any semblance of a personal life, that has to be kind of an interesting rope to walk.
Yeah, it's all. I think again, I have mm, my family's always been super supportive. There's been tons of things that I've had to miss. My friends have always been great. Tons of things there I've had to miss too, but they've always been understanding. And yeah, it's never easy, but you got to do what you got to do.
I definitely think having a support network that understands, or as much as someone on the outside can understand that, like how your job is or really your
Mhm.
life, has to make things much easier.
Absolutely. I'm super fortunate with my support system back home, friends and family. They're all great. Super lucky.
Yeah. So you do need t-shirts. That way they can all wear them at shows.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Um, so jumping back to we touched on it a little bit with Japanese fans. As you are, you know, as your name becomes bigger, you're definitely going to have more of this. But have you had any like strange fan interactions yet?
Um, in person, I'd say not so much. In the DMs, though, of course. But I'd say, thankfully, nothing worse than anybody else would expect. I'm sure a lot of my my girlfriends would have worse messages in their inboxes. Just people trying to buy, not just if people try to buy ring worn gear, that's fine. But when you specify it's not the gear, it's the underwear, probably not going to respond.
Yeah, yeah.
I try
Although
not to. I try not to look at the DMs so much anymore.
if you ever fall on hard times, at least you know that's
So
a
plan B,
source.
yeah.
You can make a lot of money that way, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Um,
It's always good to know I have a fallback. So it's my safety net.
um, so this is more of an opinion question on this. So, um, and not something I think that you would necessarily come across within New Japan, but maybe doing various shows outside. What are your feelings on like intergender wrestling?
I would love to see more of it personally. It's something that I've only had one intergender match, but I'm definitely interested in dipping my toes into it more. I actually wrestled my friend Willow Nightingale,
Love
who
her.
just became the inaugural New Japan Strong Women's Champion, which is a pay-per-view just happened a couple nights ago as of recording here. The main event in the Walter Pyramid in Long Beach. Super happy for her. But yeah, she's somebody who's had a ton of intergender matches, and I never understood the complaint about it. It just never made sense to me. It's storytelling, or just let people wrestle.
Yeah. Anyone who listens to this podcast knows we love Willow Nightingale on this podcast.
Hell yeah, Willow
We
rules. Huge shout out to Willow.
Yeah, she is amazing. And she seems like one of those people who like she has such positive energy on screen, like she just glows. I don't think that's something you can fake. Like she has to at least partially be like that in
That's
real.
why she's likable because you could just tell, like, oh, she's just happy. She's authentic in
Yeah.
every sense of the word.
Yeah, she's like I think probably the easiest way to make someone a heel would be, have them do something mean to her because you're clearly the devil. You do anything to that woman.
Absolutely.
Um, Sorry. I just went completely off as soon as you said her name.
No, I completely understand. Yeah.
But yeah, it's it's interesting and different promotions have tackled it different ways or not at all. But switching gears a little bit, how do you um feel about people who do more comedy wrestling, like your Joe Hendry's, for example?
Yeah, again, it's, people are just wrestling is just so it's such a broad medium. It's an entire medium. I think it's like music or movies. There's different kinds of it. Like if you don't like comedy, that's fine. Obviously, there's a market for it. Obviously, there are people that like it, people that like doing it, people who are good at it. Shut the fuck up. Just don't watch it. Who cares? Like let people enjoy what they want to enjoy. Whatever kind of wrestling. Who cares? Hardcore, deathmatch, intergender, whatever crazy stuff. I don't know. Just that's why there's different kinds of stuff. Like the stuff that you like, and other
Mm,
people like the stuff that they like. You're wasting energy focusing on stuff like that. I never understood it.
yeah. What for you personally, are there any matches that you would be like, I'm gonna pass on that? Like any style that you just
Particularly, I don't know if I would ever do like a death match kind of thing. Not a big needle guy, but outside of that, I'm pretty open-minded as far as wrestling goes. I like being creative and making things work.
no interest to have glass all in your body?
Believe it or not, it's not something I've ever looked forward to. Some of those people are tough motherfuckers. That's something I could ever picture doing. That seems very painful.
Yeah, I've had like a tiny piece of glass stuck in my foot once, and I can't imagine that being my body. So,
Yeah, just in there. Some people are like, yeah, I got some pieces. They're just in there. I haven't come out yet. It's like, oh, so you just walk around with the glass, but it hurts.
that oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
that sounds like hell,
yeah, no.
actual hell. So we shouldn't be looking for you in any death matches coming up.
I'll
Gotcha.
leave that to the folks who are good at it.
Hmm. The folks who are good at it are really good at it. I will say that.
Absolutely.
Um, so who is sort of on your wrestling bucket list of people you would like to face?
Um, I know this is going to sound like a lame answer, but I don't really have an actual personal bucket list. I've always been a kind of go with the flow, take it as you come kind of thing. Because especially as we've all learned with the pandemic, you can have plans, shit changes. I don't want to put a hard answer on something that I might never be able to really control. And I've had some amazing opponents in the past and some coming up that I never would have dreamed of having. Some I never would have thought to put on the list because I thought there's no way that it's happened. So instead of hoping I fight people, I'm just gonna appreciate the opportunities when they do come up because they've been great. I wrestled Josh Barnett. I wrestled John Moxley. I'm wrestling Katsuyori Shibata in a couple days from this recording.
Mm-hmm.
Like, every anybody else is just cherry on top. I've had a good run so far. I'm happy with that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
anybody and everybody.
yeah. And again, you know, within 5 years to be wrestling these names, I think really speaks a lot to the faith that, promoters have in you. So, um, you know,
It's
I,
very cool. Yeah, and I've had a lot of amazing opportunities and I'm very fortunate and try to make the best of them. Try not to let anybody down when I'm giving these things because if I get that trust put in me, that means something.
yeah. And I mean, it looks like you're just like on your way up. So we are very happy to be like sneaking in that
Well,
scenario.
thank you very much.
Yeah. Um, so kind of we were talking about t-shirts before, wrestling t-shirts, a little bit. Have you ever been like, I call it wrestling paraphernalia, but like a collectibles type of guy, like growing up, was there anything that you collected specifically of wrestling, or were you just watching?
I wasn't, well, actually, I had a decent amount of different, I like collecting stuff as a kid, different kinds of cards, this and that. As far as wrestling specifically, I had a few different sets of the old school cards because they were easy to come by. And it was cool to watch to look at the foil. I was a big Mankind fan. He's a Long Island guy, and they always had a lot of cool holographic Mankind, Cactus Jack, Dude Love cards. But I collected a lot of WWE specifically had a figure line. They were like the classic superstars figures. They had tons of lines. Every line had like 6 or 7 guys. It was like Andre the Giant, Macho Man, blah blah blah. And then they had tons and tons of them. They were always in this cool, sleek black and gold box. And I had like 40 or 50 of them. I
Oh
had
wow.
tons of them. Some exclusive ones, a special Dude Love, an exclusive Rowdy Piper, some fucking American bullshit Sergeant Slaughter thing. I still have them. They're all in boxes, but I collected a lot of those figures. They're really cool. Don't know what the fuck I'm gonna do with them. I'll figure that out at some point. But a lot of other kinds of collections too. An extensive Mortal Kombat collection. So, but that might be a story for another time.
If Megan was here, she would have jumped on that one.
Hell yeah. Next
This
time.
this would have been the tangent time. Not that we haven't gone on them already. If you're ever looking for ideas on what to do, if you just go like if you have TikTok or you look at a TikTok and you look at Wrestle Talk, you'll see some people who have done some like really neat things with their collections. And others that aren't so cool. Like it's not my thing to just take wrestling figures and like staple them to the wall, but some people do that.
Mhm.
Others do like some more unique things with them, but if you're ever looking for ideas. Um, Crossing over into video games a little bit, I'm assuming since you're a video game fan and a wrestling fan, you must have like grown up playing and probably, I would imagine, still play wrestling video games.
I grew up definitely playing a ton of wrestling games. The friend who introduced me to wrestling when I was a kid, shout out to Steven. Yo, Steve. We always watch wrestling and we played WWF No Mercy on his N64, which is a game he got for his birthday when it came out. And that was the first one I played. And then we got a PlayStation 2. We got SmackDown Just Bring It. Shut Your Mouth. We get Here Comes the Pain, but we got SmackDown vs. Raw. It's from around there. They were on the PlayStation 2 time. I fell off, but I have the N64 hooked up in my room now, and every now and then I'll pop in my own copy of No Mercy and play a couple rounds. I like how you had to like manually do the worm as Scotty Too Hottie. Like it wasn't just press a button. Like you had to set the guy in the right spot and then do your taunt and then hit the people at the right time. Thought that was really cool. And then you got the special Too Cool dance cutscene afterwards and you could change the outfits on them to make them different people. It's just a fun game. That's a tangent. I could go off, but yeah, I played a lot of No Mercy.
Yeah, I've played very few video games. Wrestling ones are some of the few ones I've played, especially the old ones.
How
Um,
old are we talking here? What do you mean old, old?
well, basically the ones you were just mentioning.
Okay, N64 era. I wasn't sure if you meant like Sega Genesis or arcade or some shit. And
I
those games
have,
just aren't fun to go back to. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, no, and I'm again like I'm not used to control. I'm very much so a smash button person.
Yeah, button masher.
Yeah, and I remember playing with some friends and who were gamers, and they were pissed because we were playing. It was like a Royal Rumble type thing, and I managed to I won by just smashing a button.
Hell yeah.
And man, I've never been cursed at so much in my life.
That's how it works in a real Royal Rumble too. You're out there, you just fucking start swinging until you're the only man standing. So you had the right strategy.
Oh, I like to think so. Um, if you were ever so the Royal Rumble tends to be a lot of fans like favorite WWE pay-per-view. Um, do you fall in line with that or like specific to WWE since um I don't think other promotions don't really do well, AEW is a little different, but like necessarily things that are themed quite like that these days.
You have to
But
have a whole pay-per-view built around it, like you're saying. Yeah.
mhm,
The WWE Royal Rumble is the as far as fun pay-per-view goes that they do, I'd say that one's number one for sure. Just to be like, who's coming? Who's gonna win? Because it could be anybody at any time. And that's always cool. It's a fun drinking game too, depending on how many people you have. That's some stuff I learned in the LA dojo from Clark and Carl. A lot of fun drinking games. I never drank before I came to the LA dojo. I was a straight edge little boy from Long Island. So now I'm a, well, I don't want to get into it, but
so what is the Royal Rumble drinking game then that they play?
okay. So let's just say, for example, Royal Rumble has 30 people, and you have six people in your party, right? You're all
Mhm.
hanging out watching the game. So you each have a scrap of there are 30 scraps of paper, 1 through 30, they're numbered, and everybody picks out five. So let's just say your hand is 2, 7, 11, 19, and 23. So when two comes out, whoever it is, you have to finish your beer assigned to each number you have. So you have five beers total. You have to drink two beers before he gets eliminated. So you could be strategic there. If it's a Royal Rumble you've seen before, you know this guy's going to last, or you think it's
Mhm.
somebody who might be knocked out pretty quick, that can dictate the speed of how you drink. If you manage to drink before they get cleared from the ring, you're good. But if you don't, there's a penalty shot. And if you win, if the number you draw gets one, is the person that winds up winning, then I don't know. You could think of your own thing, but we normally just get a penalty shot. But that's a fun game.
Oh my
It's a
God.
lot of strategy once you start getting into it because you might get two numbers back to back, and there might be people that you think aren't going to last too long. You got to be smart about it.
Yeah, as soon as you said like you have to drink two before they're eliminated, I just started thinking about like, oh God, there are so many people that like come in and then are like eliminated within a minute.
Yep.
Oh, like if you have Brock Lesnar standing in the ring and then your person comes, oh,
Yep.
oh,
You got to be careful.
yeah. So are you drawing the numbers at random?
Yeah, they're all from a hat.
Okay.
So everybody, I guess, picks however, depending on how many people you have. If you have six people, everybody would pick five numbers from the hat randomly. It has to be a hat. That's the one hard rule.
Okay.
Doesn't work otherwise. Yeah.
Has to be a hat. Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Yeah. Won't
Uh,
work.
but that seems like a game I would have enjoyed in college.
Yeah, honestly, looking back, it was fun. The 2 years that I spent drinking before I kind of started hating having hangovers. I had that period between 24 and 26 where I was like, oh, okay, cool, drinking is cool, but then I turned 27 and I had a very short run of enjoying drinking. Now that the hangovers were too much.
Yeah, they only get worse as you get older.
Yeah, so it's fun while it lasted. Had a good run.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's important to use your liver in that period of
I
time.
mean, I got it. May as well use it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Um, Getting away from wrestling drinking games, although, you know,
Boo.
if anyone has any others, please feel free to share because now I'm very
Yeah.
curious. I don't think I've never played a wrestling drinking game. I'm pretty sure about that. The only drinking game I ever played was like with an entertainment factor that wasn't like a card game was when the movie Twilight came out. Anytime
I'm already interested.
anytime the Kristen Stewart would like rapidly blink, touch her hair, or bite her lip, you would have to drink. I was we were all like in college, so like 21, 22. We got full before the end of the movie, and I was just like,
Yeah.
I can't drink anymore. I physically cannot drink.
Perfect pregame.
Like it was, I don't recommend that unless like if you have a serious drinking problem and a big stomach, then you go for
Then
it.
I definitely recommend it. Go
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. Twilight drinking game. Only played it once, but that's something I never thought I'd mention on a wrestling podcast.
Well,
But
there you go.
um, so my other question that I have coming up. So you've had a couple of nicknames now. As I mentioned before, the world's strongest baby, and the android, which I'm assuming you prefer the android.
Typically I'd say yes.
Um, well, I have a couple of questions. So, with the Android, are you an Android user as well, or an iPhone
No,
user?
I have an iPhone, even though Steve Jobs is an evil man. And I hate Apple, but it's just I've had Apple. It's gonna take me too long to learn how to use Android, and it's just easier. I
Mm,
hate that I have one, but I do.
so you don't follow through on your nickname. Got it.
Not at all. Yep.
Do
Total turncoat.
do you have any other wrestling nicknames, even like out like that the other wrestlers might call you that you're willing to share?
Um, Honestly, no, just regular nicknames, Al, Dog, Coggers, stuff like that. But as far as actual wrestling monikers, it's just been the Android as far as actual wrestling monikers. That's
Okay.
basically it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty good one. Not like it always reminds me of John Cena's The Prototype, which wasn't
Yeah,
a moniker, but it was a character. But
very
being
similar vibes.
being compared to John Cena is not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I've been called compared to much worse, so I'll take it.
Yeah. Um, so growing up, who were some of the like wrestlers that you really followed?
When I was a kid, Mick Foley was my guy. Even before I learned he was a Long Island guy, that was just cherry on top. But it was between him and Scotty 2 Hotty. They were
Uh,
my two main guys.
that
When I first initially started, yeah.
was Too Cool your favorite tag team?
They were cool, but I don't know what it was. I just liked the worm. I just liked Scotty. Grandmaster was awesome in his own right.
Mhm.
Opposed to I like Too Cool because Scotty was in it. I liked his hair. I liked the worm.
The hair was super fun.
Yeah, I always like seeing how long he would be able to keep the little visor hat on in the match because he never took it off before he wrestled. It would
Mhm.
normally be until he had to do a nip up, and then when he nipped up, the hat would fly off his head. But it's always fun to see when it would come off.
It always reminded me of like a pot blowing its lid in a cartoon.
Yeah, the steam. Yeah,
Mhm.
like the Slim Jim guy.
Speaking of Mick Foley, he is well, he can't ride them anymore, but he was a big theme park guy. And we have a theme park around here that he was a huge and is a huge fan of, Knobles. Have you ever been?
No, I haven't. Where is it?
Middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania.
Hmm,
So it's probably 3 hours from Long Island, I would say.
okay, not too far.
Yeah, if I had to guess. Just based on like if you had to cut through like the Scranton area, that's how it would go. But yeah, I'm not sponsored. But Knobles is you don't pay an entrance fee for it, you just pay for the rides that you ride.
Interesting.
So it's great for families, which is his family. They still go there every year. I know people all the time, like, because I'll get texts from people being like, "Oh, I saw that wrestler guy that you like at Knobles," and I know that that means Mick Foley. Um,
Awesome.
So Megan's seen him there, but she didn't want to like bother him because he was with his family. Um,
Right, yeah.
which more wrestling fans should really pick up on when
That
it's
that would
appropriate to approach.
yeah. I mean just in general, not that it's happened too much to me, but just in a general sense, yes, I agree.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on lately. Like, it seems like fans are becoming more aggressive, specifically with like bringing boards of things for wrestlers to sign and
Yeah.
like cornering them. Um,
It will reach an equilibrium at some point because there will be blowback because it is at the point where it is ridiculous to bring a bunch of shit and expect people to just stand there at the airport and sign stuff. So people are just going to flat out say no. That's
mhm.
becoming more popular, which is great. And then they'll stop doing it because people aren't going to do it anymore. And that'll be the norm. And, the equilibrium will be achieved eventually. But as long as we're steadfast in our nose. Again, I say our as if people are approaching me with boards of shit to sign. But again, generally speaking, I
Once
think
you
that's
get
how
those
it
t-shirts.
should and will go. Exactly. Yeah. That's when the people be coming in droves.
Hmm. Um, yeah, I think one of the worst things I ever saw in person was down in Philly. Um, leaving the arena. Fans will wait. And Liv Morgan, it was before she had her big run. Um, like before she really started to take off. She wasn't on TV for a while, but she was still showing up for tapings and stuff. And she was leaving and she was stopped in traffic and I saw
Oh boy.
somebody throw their phone into her car. People were throwing like just stuff into her car. And I was like, what? I was like, first of all, you're taking a big risk that someone's going to give you back your phone.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a big if.
yeah, I wouldn't. Like, but yeah, someone threw a title belt through her window. I was like, this is probably a rental. Like, you're going to damage this car.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, and she signed it, which again, insanity. But um, I I get so like upset for people when I see these things happening. It's just like, just be a person, be a person.
Literally throwing a 30-pound metal object and had a woman in a car.
Yeah, and
Like, you just can't do it for me. I deserve this.
mhm.
What a fucking interaction that would be. Oh my God.
Like she was, and she was the driver too. Like, thankfully,
Jesus.
yeah, yeah. It's just like, oh, I know you're driving in traffic right now,
Yeah.
but oh,
I'm more important though.
yeah, your safety and your life don't matter. Sign this for me.
Prove that I met you so I can sell it for twice as much as I bought it for.
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime that I've ever gone to like, because I've gone to some of the wrestling conventions and stuff, and they ask like, do you want me to put your name on? I'm always like, yes, this isn't going anywhere.
Yeah. I
Please
always
put my name.
ask, yeah, just to make sure.
Hmm. Yeah. Thankfully, like I have a pretty traditional spelling of my name, but I've seen some people like it's like trying to tell someone your Starbucks order.
Yeah.
But um, back onto some sort of track here. Did you ever, so when you were a kid, into like a teen, did you meet any wrestlers growing up?
Growing up, I went to one meet and greet. It was actually with John Cena at the Massapequa Mall. It was John Cena and Dawn Marie
Oh,
at some
wow. Okay.
collectible store. That was like in fucking 2003, 2004. So a long time ago. But yeah, that was the one meet and greet I went to. You got my picture taken with the wrestler.
I mean, that's a pretty good one to
He's
have.
gonna do one. Yeah,
Yeah.
honestly. Pretty big name.
Yeah. I feel like at this point, Long Island has kind of become a hot spot in a way for like wrestling companies to come through, and to have meet and greets at. Um, like at least that's my take on it now. Maybe I'm just seeing it more. Um,
It's definitely a popular place. The East Coast in New York,
mhm.
specifically, is very hot for wrestling right now. There's a lot going on. a lot of events, a lot of meet and greets, especially with AEW and all these other companies touring through and doing stuff. It's weird because as a kid, you feel like you saw more meet and greets at like malls and stuff. I guess that's just not a thing that happens as much anymore, as far as I know. But I'm also not exactly looking for that kind of stuff, so maybe I'm just missing them. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in New York and Long Island. I mean, look at half the people on the AEW roster are from Long Island, so
Yeah.
we have a big market there, big market for wrestling in general.
Yeah, I think if New Japan hadn't snatched you up, AEW would have by now. So,
Yeah, they love the Long Islanders.
yeah, it's like, oh, you're from Long Island, you already have a foot in the door.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Not that that is a bad thing, you
not
know.
at all. Hey, yeah, I'll take the advantage.
Yeah, more East Coasters working, the better. Um,
Exactly.
but um, do you obviously you have a very busy schedule, and I'm sure you're watching the New Japan products.
Hmm.
Do you keep up with other wrestling?
Here and there. I won't dedicate time to watching one product consistently. I bounce around and watch a lot of shit. Like I'll go on YouTube and just watch random stuff, indies from America, old Japanese stuff, old lucha matches. Nothing in particular, just a bunch of old stuff, bunch of new stuff. I guess just a bunch of stuff in general.
Okay. Are there any wrestlers that you like pay closer attention to? Um, that you that are wrestling now that maybe you haven't wrestled, that you particularly enjoy their matches?
There are a handful of people. Some that I have wrestled that I'd like to wrestle again, but there are people that I haven't wrestled. Um, just in general in New Japan and maybe somewhere on the Indies where I might get the opportunity to do so. Um, some people in the UK, like there's a guy Connor Mills. I'll shout him out. I've been wanting to wrestle him since I had a little excursion in London, not London, in England, about a year and a half ago. I was in Rev Pro. I did 5 weeks there, and we didn't happen to cross paths. But he's a guy I'm looking forward to wrestling one day. And there are a lot of names, but again, I take them as they come, as opposed to you know trying to throw stuff out there.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, of your own body of work, if someone was like, "Oh, you got to watch this guy," what three matches of yours would you say like would give someone a good taste of like who you are as a wrestler and like hook them in?
I would say a good one would be me against Tom Lawler at Bloodsport 7. I would say me versus Clark Connors at the second LA Dojo showcase that we did during the pandemic era of tapings. And there's a match that's coming out pretty soon. We taped it in Philadelphia, me versus Tracy Williams. That's going to air very soon. So that match coming up, I think those are a pretty good roundabout nutshell experience for me, for Alex Coughlin's wrestling.
All right. So anyone who, you know, wants to who does not know your body of work yet,
Hmm.
you have homework to do now.
Exactly. Have it on my desk in the morning.
Yes. Yeah. Um, otherwise, three chops,
Yeah.
which are chops as awful as they seem to be?
Worse, even if you could believe it,
Ugh,
especially mine.
that I believe.
Yeah.
That I believe. Um, my other question for you. So we do a segment. Well, so once a month we take and dedicate a show, or an episode rather, to we call it Women Wrestling Forgot. And it's women of yesteryear. And I mean, yesteryear in wrestling, I feel like it moves so fast. Or maybe like my brain is just out of whack. But people who, women who don't tend to come up in conversations like as much as maybe they should. Um, so not your, I mean, Trish and Lita are wrestling now again, but like not your Molly Hollies, for example. We've done, um, why can my mind just blanked on them. We've done like Ivory, Luna Vachon. Why can't I think of anybody else. We just Wendy Richter, people like that. Is there anyone that you would suggest?
Oh, we could do more on the Japanese side with
Mhm.
you could do Acuity Suzuki or Manami Toyota, Chikusa Nagayo. Uh, I'm trying to think of her name. Akira Hokuto. I think those would be some good names to start with. If you wanted to broaden the horizons a little bit. Aja Kong. Awesome Kong's a great one too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I specifically wanted to ask you actually because of your knowledge of Japanese wrestling.
Mm.
So yes, we will definitely add them to the list. Um, I will have to. I was trying to write fast as you
Oh,
like, and then I was like, wait, I'm recording this. Why?
oh, perfect. Yeah, you can just remind me and message me later, and I could send you the names too if you want.
That would probably. I'm dyslexic, so like spelling in English is fun, let alone like trying to
Yeah,
pronounce Japanese names.
that could be tricky.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and my only other question for you. So you've talked a little bit about an upcoming match that you have, but is there anything else of yours that people should keep an eye out for?
Yeah, well, we're doing the Ring of Honor tapings coming up. I also have Beyond Wrestling, May 28th. Those of the Gods. It's going to be in Lowell, Massachusetts. I'm going to be hanging out with my uncle while I'm up there. He's over there in Boston. Going to make a trip out of it. But it's going to be me and Alec Price. That's a match that was supposed to happen last month, one that I've been looking forward to for a long time. So it's way past due. So I'm itching to kick his head off. So that's coming up on the 28th. And that's all on my radar right now. You can check me out on Instagram at something something deadlift. That was my first Instagram name I made before I was a wrestler, and I never changed it. I don't know. I'm gonna keep it that way. And Twitter is at Alex Coughlin 93. So thank you again very much, Sabrina. I hope Megan feels better, and I hope I did a good job filling her shoes tonight. And thank you very much for having me on this podcast.
Yeah, thank you. And you did a wonderful job. We'll be
Well,
sure
thank you
to,
very much.
well, you can add this to your resume and we'll be sure to call you up again when she's
Hell yeah.
um well, yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, everyone check Alex out, give him a follow, and do your homework and watch those matches.
Hell yeah.
We do have a special sign off that we do on the podcast, and hopefully it does not offend you. But um, I'm going to do it anyway. You don't have to join in. So what we say is in the name of our Lord and Savior John Cena, hustle, loyalty, and respect. Yabadoo.
In the name of our Lord and Savior, John Cena, hustle, loyalty, and respect. Yabba do.
Thank you, and we'll see you
Of
next
course.
week.
Absolutely. Peace.